pictures did you kind of want to go over today?
I have this one.
Okay.
And I like how soft like the blend is from the root all the way down.
Okay.
And I like how it's like a soft blonde too. Like I like the tone of this one.
Okay.
And then this is just kind of something we did before.
Okay.
And I like how the money piece, it's just like a little one and it's like blended.
Okay.
So that it'll grow out like seamlessly.
Perfect. Can I hold that for 1 sec? I just want to show. It's like this is what we did before on her. And then this is sort of what she's looking to do today. So just like a bit softer of a blonde. And then do you like how high the blonde goes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do
okay.
like that.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so basically we'll just be refreshing today. There's not too much we'll have to do to your ends, just sort of like brighten them up maybe a little bit at the sink, and then just sort of refoil the top. And then do, yeah, the small money piece. Do you like when we do kind of like the hairline detailing at the front where it sort of just looks like a really soft highlight around like the whole
The whole
hairline? Okay, perfect. So we'll do that at the sink. And I'm gonna go get everything mixed to get started. Are we trimming your hair at all?
I think maybe a little bit.
Yeah. It grew so much, I feel
know.
like I know your hair's always long, but like, whoa.
we literally cut it 2 months ago.
Yeah,
too.
I know, I didn't realize until I literally pulled it back and I was like, it's pretty long. No, it feels really good too.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'll be right back, okay? So basically what we're gonna be doing today is a beginner friendly video on how to do a balayage. This is how we like to do it here at LCS. Something really straightforward. We're going to be starting off actually just doing a regular highlight. And the reason why we like to do it that way is for a few reasons. It allows us to get as close to the root as possible. So that means we're able to customize that root. So if we want it a bit shorter, it's just sort of easier to go about it that way than, you know, TZ lights, especially just with where her regrowth is. So we're gonna go in and I'm gonna do a partial highlight. I'm gonna show you guys how I like to do my face framing. And then after the most important part, which is the blending and the toning, and that's gonna give it that rooted, lived-in sort of look, and this is where you can do all your customization. So the best way to start, if you've never done this before, is just focus on your highlight placement, and I'm going to show you exactly what I like to do when I'm doing something like this. It's pretty straightforward. It's a really good intro into starting that lived-in look, and then once you get the hang of it, you can kind of customize it from there. So I'm going to go get everything mixed up. I'm going to be starting off with, first of all, our magnetic bowls. We just got new trays, and honestly, I didn't realize how life-changing it would be. They came with magnetic bowls, which I didn't realize at first. Game changer. Honestly, I'll show you guys what carts we're using now. We're all obsessed. It even has like a tool holder and everything you would need. They're great. So I'm going to start off with this bowl, and then I'm going to go in with the blonde meat, and I'm going to start with 10. I always start with 10, especially on her level of hair. Honestly, you can get the same level of lift starting with a lower volume, and it's so much more gentle on the hair. A lot of people usually say that they feel their hair feels even better after coming here and getting it lifted. So you just have to honestly use the low and slow analogy, and it really doesn't fail. So I'm going to go in and just start with about 25 grams of lightener. I like to do 1 to 2, so I'm going to do 50 grams of 10 Vol. We honestly get these big jugs because we go back, like, we go through them so quickly. So I kind of like this consistency because I know once it starts to oxidize, it usually kind of changes a little bit, so I like it not too thick. Okay, let's go get started. Okay, so when I said that this was pretty straightforward and easy, this is what I mean. I'm literally just making a mohawk section, and that's where I'm going to start. Because she is so blonde, I really don't need to go in and do a lot of the underneath. Typically with her hair, we only do the underneath maybe once or twice a year, and the rest we just focus it mainly on the top and the sides. I'm starting in the crown area, and as you can see, I am just taking just a regular weave. I like to do this every single time I start in this area just to help blend out any color from before. That way they don't just have a stark highlight that's sort of just like a streak right there. Like if they wore their hair half up or something, I just feel like it looks a little bit nicer. She also wanted a bit more dimension, which is why I'm keeping it more of a weave in this area. Just a little tip for that area too. If you're trying to keep it more dimensional, the more you pack it in, because all of that hair lays on top of each other, it could look a lot lighter in this area as opposed to when you're getting closer and closer to the front hairline. And you can definitely see the difference when that happens. She wants more dimension anyways, just like the photos I showed where it was a little bit more ribboned. So I'm not going in and doing them super super fine like baby lights or anything. I'm just doing more of a regular weave just to keep it soft in the back, dimensional. It's been a little bit, so now that I am done the crown of the head, I'm just going to keep working my way up towards the front hairline. I like to do as many going forward towards the front hairline as I can. She does have a lot of hair, so eventually I'm going to have to switch once I get a bit closer. But after I do the crown, I typically switch back to doing just a regular slice. As you can see, I'm still doing them very fine. I don't do chunky highlights or anything, but I'm not too concerned about absolutely packing them in there. I'm also going through and I am pulling out any existing blonde, because you obviously don't want to go over that. You don't want to cause any breakage, and her ends are fairly light. Underneath, she didn't really have as much blonde, so there wasn't too much that I needed to pick out, but you will see me going through each highlight and pretty much just anything that I see, I'm just going to move to the side after I cover the root just to avoid any breakage, any overlapping. Her hair is so long and tangly naturally, so I don't want to cause more of that by drying her hair out. I just wanted to show you guys really quickly how thick her hair actually is. I feel like you can see it a little bit more from this view. She has absolutely stunning hair. I love when she books her hair appointments, honestly, because I love doing her hair. I always get amazing photos of it. It's so naturally long and thick, but you can see definitely just from the side view of this mohawk section how thick her hair is. In comparison to other videos you might have seen, this definitely is a little bit more of a spaced out highlight than I typically do on any of my blondes that stay as highlights, or if I'm really jam packing them in there. You'll know as you start to continue to watch all these videos from LCS how much we actually do pack in those foils. It's pretty much what we're known for. So it's always like a little weird when I do a little bit more of a dimensional blonde, because I'm more used to packing them in there than this. So to me, this feels like super spaced out, even though I know it's not. It's just kind of a regular highlight. Now that I'm getting a little bit closer to the hairline, I'm going to start weaving again. I just like to start to soften this area because once we get to the front, I do put them a bit closer together because she does want the front a lot brighter. Even though we are doing a dimensional blonde, she still wants to see the brightness all in the front. So when you start doing the sides and you're going to keep all the brightness in the front, you're just going to want to keep all the foils pretty much back to back in this area, and you're going to want to get all the baby hairs that you can. You will see a difference if you don't do that detailing with any little baby hairs, or if the part goes back a little bit further. You need to make sure you are highlighting those, otherwise it will kind of look just more of like a dark hole. Here's an example of where you would want to make sure that you're foiling, because if she were to pull her hair back, all the corners on both sides, you would see how they're not going to be as bright, especially when you are doing more of that fine detailing around the front. So this is where you're going to want to double check and make sure that you don't miss any of those spots. So after you finish doing the same thing on both sides, that's when you're going to move to the front. And I'm just going to take a few foils back to back, really, really fine. And I'm also going to be really careful in this area. This is a really fine area, and you really don't want to cause any breakage or dryness. So I like to just be really, really mindful when I'm foiling here. I'll try to, pick out any blonde pieces, move them to the side. That way I know no lighteners getting on them or anything. After you're done doing any money piece it is that you are doing, you're going to bring the weaves back and they're going to be really, really fine. And I'm like micro, like I do them so, so small. And this is how you're going to get a really, really blended front. If you ever see those photos on Pinterest or anything where it looks so seamless, but it almost looks so solid in the front, that's how you do it. You could do 10 foils back to back if you wanted a huge money piece. That's completely fine. But if you still wanted a very blended, lived in look, you're going to do about 6 to 10 like micro weaves after that money piece. Because if you do any sort of slice, it doesn't matter how thin or small it is, because there's no dimension going through that piece, it's still going to look like almost like there's a chunk there, and it's so hard to blend out. After you're done with the blending, you can just switch back to slices if that's what you would like to do. You can continue to do weaves if you would like to. I usually will switch back to slices just for a little bit more impact. And then you just continue right up the top of the head until you meet that back foil where you started in the back. I don't know about you guys, but I love taking foils out. I think it's so satisfying. So you can see definitely how light she got. So I'm just starting in the back, just where I started, taking those out. If I'm going through and I see anything that needs to sit, I'll just leave it for a couple minutes. So for toning her, I'm going to use Balayage, and I'm going to use 1013 and 1002 mixed together, probably about half and half. It'll give it just a really creamy, brighter blonde that she was showing. And the O2 will help cut any warmth through her ends that are there. And then for her base, I'm just going to be using 713 with a little bit of 6N because she's not quite a 6. She's more so a 7, but just to give it a little bit of that depth. So that's what I'm going to be using for her root smudge. And then for her ends, just the 1013 and the 1002. Also, one thing that I really like to do when I'm doing any sort of balayage and I'm dealing with multiple colors is I always use either a black or a colored bowl for the root, and then for the ends I use a clear one, so that way I don't get them mixed up. Clear usually just because of doing blonde, so then I know these are for the ends and this is for the root. So I like to have on my tray a tail comb and a blending brush, and I have a wet brush out there already just in case I need to do any detangling. After I shampooed her, I put in Moroccan oil hydrating conditioner, and I always do that before I tone. It just helps with the brush out process, and also I just like to do that before I'm toning blonde. Just helps with the porosity, gets it a little bit more even, helps condition the hair. I really like to do that step, and I feel like it really helps when toning. This is my favorite part of the whole process. So I'm going to start toning. I did start actually with the root smudge further down than where I started the highlights. And I like to do that because just in case there's anything that needs to be blended out from her last color, I just like to make sure that everything is covered around that area where I started. If she throws her hair up or whatever, you just want to all to look blended and fresh and nice. So I'm going in and I'm doing a really, really small root tap. I like to keep it on the smaller side because she does have the dimension in there, but also the smaller the root tap you do, the longer they have with the color as it's growing out. If you do a longer root tap, the client typically feels like they need to come in a little sooner, but if it's all preference, like if that's what they're looking for, then I would just let them know, like we can definitely give you more of a rooted look. You just might feel like you need it done a little sooner. So after a couple sections, I will typically brush that through just so that I'm not doing too much all at once. I like to sort of blend and brush as I go, and I think that's a really important step, especially when you are trying to keep the root a little bit smaller. I just don't want it to process too much before I'm able to blend that out because I don't want to create any stark lines or anything. And just another tip also, when you are brushing this out, you do want to make sure that there's no tangles or anything in the hair. Her hair is like pretty hard to brush when it's wet. She has great hair. It's just when it's wet, it's so tangly. It is like a bit harder, but you do want to make sure that you're getting all the tangles because you don't want to create any spots from the root, especially if you're doing a dark root. I did want to refresh all of her blonde with the toner, so that's just what I'm doing now is I'm going through with the end toner and just refreshing it a little bit. I like to gloss over everything, even if I'm just sort of doing a partial, just to give everything a fresh look and blend. After I did this section, I just went through the bottom and underneath, and I just like lightly rooted again after I toned the ends just to make sure everything is blended. If anything faded out from before, I just like to cover all my bases with that. Now I'm going to be doing the top and the sides, and it's going to look just slightly different in the sense of I'm going to start toning with the end color first. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to keep a lot of the brightness around at the front and through the top. I don't want the root to be too far down because the inspiration pictures she was showing me were still very blonde. I don't want to take away from that. I started with the root at the back because underneath in those photos she showed me, there was a lot more depth and dimension. So I want that to show through because if you have the depth and dimension underneath, it's going to make the blonde pop a lot more on top. After you're done applying the end toner, now you're going to go back in with the roots. I'm going to section out the very front hairline because I'm going to do that last. And right here, it's probably going to look like I am bringing the root down a little bit more. And that's only because this is where her regrowth was from the last time she got her hair done, and we didn't foil there. So I'm just, again, reblending everything out so it's all really nice. But as I'm getting up closer to where I foiled, you'll see that I'm not going down too far with the root, and I'm actually going to do the root tap and then just go back in with the end toner, just to make sure I got it all and I didn't miss any spots. Now you're going to brush everything through. This is honestly such a satisfying part. You're really going to start to see the color kind of show through of what it's going to look like after it's been sitting for a couple minutes when you're toning. And I just go back in, do any little touch-ups I feel like I need just to make sure you're not missing anything before you move to the front. I use this little towel trick, and that is just so that you can do a really precise job on the front. And if you want to keep the root really, really small, or you don't really want to root at all and you just want to gloss the ends, this is a really good way to do it so you're not getting any spots from the root on the ends of that front piece. Then after you tone, all you're going to want to do is wash and style, and just look how stunning this turned out. I'm honestly obsessed with her hair. I hope this video was a good breakdown for you if you really want to start getting into doing lived-in blondes or a balayage. If you have any questions that maybe I missed or something else that you thought of, just let me know in the comments, or let me know if there's anything specific you would like to see when it comes to doing a lived-in look.